Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Free Thought Forum, brought to you by the friendly folks at Pennsylvania Nonbelievers. At my side is a familiar face from previous shows, the illustrious Carl Huber. Say hello there, Carl.
Hello, everyone. I'm interested in being back.
Again. And to Carl's side is me, Doug Diggins. Carl and myself have been presenting the Free Thought Forum for, well over 10 years, along with many other talented people, both in front of the camera and behind it, performing all the tech stuff that makes the show possible. Many thanks to everyone that has made this show possible. You know, as of last week, it's maybe interesting to note that Pennsylvania Nonbelievers has been in existence for over 13 years and helping other people besides ourselves with doubts about God and religion, and help them realize that they are not alone, but rather part of a largely unseen population that numbers in the tens of millions. It's just that we're somewhat invisible. This program is both educational and a source of support for those that think that they are alone in their non-belief. And that's basically why we are here. Now, first part of the show, I'm going to turn it over to Carl, and you have at it, Carl.
All righty. Thank you, Doug. That worked out pretty nicely, I think. Mm-hmm. Covers it pretty well as far as we're out to help and support and inform. So, at the end of July, first week of August, I went to Chautauqua Institution up in western New York State. Probably about 17th or 18th visit there over 30 years. It's a place where, amazingly enough, lots of religions exist, and they don't feud with one another.
No.
There's the Episcopal House and the Presbyterian House and the Ministers' Union, the Lutheran House, and the King's Sons and Daughters, and a whole bunch of other religions, because originally Chautauqua was founded as a revival meeting, but evolved greatly into an educational institution. They have theater and opera, they have concerts. Friday night we were there, the Garrison Keillor show came into town and performed in their amphitheater, which holds some 6,000 people.
If you don't mind me asking, what is the Garrison Keillor show? Not familiar.
Prairie Home Companion.
Oh,
They
okay.
Put it on NPR, and first 10 or 15 times it's fun. After that, it gets to be the same old thing.
Okay.
But
just curious.
It's a variety show. They have singers and tell jokes sometimes and things like that. But people who listen to NPR would be aware of it. One thing, the week we were there was one of their theme weeks. They have 9 theme weeks during the summer, and the one we were there for was American System of Justice. The featured speaker Monday morning was Associate Justice Ginsburg.
Ah.
There was also the guy who is responsible for HBO's TV show The Wire, which looks at police work and stuff like that. A woman from the Innocence Project was there. The Innocence Project just freed a man who had spent 22 years in jail because of alleged prosecutorial misconduct. The prosecutor had not presented evidence that would have let the guy off, and some other people. A very interesting week. But a lot of the programming is religious. They have a religious service every morning. The curious thing I thought of on the way on today was that they also have other things that go along at the same time, going on at the same time as the religious services, and those things are far better attended one way or another than the religious services themselves.
Oh.
And I always wondered about bridge players because I play bridge, and the Sacred Song service is held Sunday night. and people go pack into the amphitheater, and yet all the bridge players are down at the sports club playing bridge. And it dawned on me that I was also at a bridge tournament down at Hunt Valley the week before that, or a week after that, and there they always have games on Sunday. As far as I know, a few bridge players show up at church, so it must be a good excuse for getting out of church. However, the number of people who play tournament bridge has been decreasing, so I'm taking it as a fact that our show being on the air and other atheist shows have allowed atheists to skip church without having to have some, side reason as to why they're doing so.
That's a valid conclusion, yeah.
So
In
that
my
was just
opinion,
seemed like a valid conclusion that with the increase of people abandoning organized religions, the decrease in Christians from the 1950s to now, going from 90-some% down into the mid-70s at best, that this is letting people not go to church and not to suffer socially because of it. So, Sunday night we arrived back from Seattle. We were in Federal Way, Washington, south of Seattle. And if you wanted to see a very religiously oriented community, I think that would be one to look at. There are Korean churches, there are Vietnamese churches, there are all different community churches, plus the standard Lutheran and stuff like that, all over the place in this town. And it's odd because they're so close to the nerd capital of the world, Seattle, well, Redmond probably, that it just seems kind of odd. I don't really know about church attendance there, but they certainly have enough of them, so they must be able to keep them up.
Do they all seem to get along together?
I guess, I suppose. Yeah. They all have signs saying, come on in and see us, so they must be anxious to drum up support. So anyhow, so what I wanted to talk about was, what God do you really believe in? Or maybe think of another way, what supernatural being is right for you? This is a question that basically led me to where I am, in that I decided there's no supernatural being that has anything to do with my life, so there's no point in trying to pick one out. Now, so the one you believe in, the Episcopalian God that accepts gay bishops, the Episcopalian God that rejects gay bishops, the one that requires you to go to Mass every Sunday, or the one that wants you to face Mecca and pray 5 times a day or so, to pray to Allah. Doesn't matter which one you choose. This is a good question. Did your umpty-ump great-grandfather really and truly pick the right one? If so many people are in the same religion as their ancestors were, they have to have decided somewhere along the line, yep, old Grandpa Jones or great-great-Grandpa Jones picked this religion, so this must be the right one. I'm not going to go against it.
So it's all handed down, and you tend to go with what your parents and your grandparents
for most people, I agree. But now there are those, however, that change. And do they possibly presume that they know better than their parents? And now they worship a different God, the only different God there could possibly be? The people who worship God say there's only one God, and that's the one I believe in. But whether it's the same one as their parents or a new religion that they picked out, how can you decide? You just pick one who agrees most with your conception of what the supernatural really wants. But it doesn't really matter. Whichever route you have chosen, know that, just think that more than 5 billion people in the world differ with you on some salient point of that religion. Whether it's a reincarnation, or don't eat pork, or don't mix beef with cow's milk, don't shave or cut your hair, or a few zillion things that no intelligent, rational, supernatural being would have anything reason to care about. how can a person logically justify not or picking one particular God out? In effect, what we're talking about here is with the Muslims and reincarnation for the Scientologists, or for the for Scientologists, and the
Excuse me.
various food requirements and things about cutting hair or not and shaving. Each of us, doesn't matter what religion or non-religion we are, we all have multiple hells awaiting us if you just go around and ask enough people.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And some of us are living in hells.
Well,
doesn't die,
okay.
but that's another show.
And so much for the existence of reward and punishment after death. It's just silly, because you'd have to take a little piece of soul and divide them up among all these different hells, unless you happen to know the exact particular correct, undeniable one you have.
Well, I mean, everyone says, especially like in the Christian religion, they talk about God, not a God or the
my
God. Yeah, it's just God. But you ask every single one of them, what is their definition of God? What is your God like? And they all have different opinions. Yet it's all of them is the same, supposedly, the same God. So this God of theirs must be a chameleon.
And people have actually told me that, it's just one God. It's just different ways of worshiping. Well, let's put it this way. As an example, a Catholic will baptize a baby within a few weeks. There's no doubt about that. They'll take it to the church and they'll do the baptism ritual. Mm-hmm. However, at a local St. Patrick's Day parade here 3 years ago, a local organization of Baptists showed up with signs saying that infant baptism is evil.
Oh, yeah?
So, yeah. Oh, yeah, Jim Grove's group.
Oh, well,
Jim Grove's group was there. But wait a minute, though. But they sincerely believe that you should not baptize infants, that God does not want that. But Catholics say, well, God wants to be baptized. So you can't claim that there's one God between the two. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's either evil or not evil, or it doesn't really matter. And guess which one my choice is? You got to just go figure. And in all the religions, there are these things, whether you can eat pork. My personal opinion about the pork thing arose in Judaism many years ago because they didn't have meat thermometer. They couldn't go to the Target and buy a meat thermometer to know that the pork was thoroughly cooked to kill any of the bad bugs. So that became ensconced in religion. Just like marriage, probably authorized by Moog or somebody, the head of some hunter-gatherer clan, got tired of his hunters beating up on each other over who got to sleep with which gatherer. And so he said, all right, you get her, and you get her, and you get her, and that's the end of it. And that was essentially the genesis, so to speak, of marriage. Mm-hmm. It's rational. Homosexuality the same way. The only way a clan can survive is reproduce as fast as possible, get as many bodies out there to live, to survive. So, yeah, homosexuality was banned.
Frowned upon, yeah.
Well, probably, yeah, or actually banned. And so, therefore, they just went ahead and wrote that down in their little book. And so when Moses went and compiled all the information of Jewish laws and customs and things into what's Genesis, and then the entire Bible, Old Testament, those were things that were rational at the time they were introduced, and somehow got to be put into God says so. Well, which God? They keep changing things, so the world's flat, the world's not flat. Those kind of things. The birds were created here, and then the birds and the mammals, and then the mammals and the birds. You know, who knows? You know, it's just their folklore, their customs, and their laws that were written down so that people would have a reasonable chance of surviving life. Now, so what are some of your choices? Well, you can join the Scientologists. They say there's just a fate and spirit, and it just moves along. You know, if somebody dies, it moves to somebody else, and there must have been a whole...
Almost like a reincarnation sort of thing.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, they basically, it's a reincarnation, but it's... the weird thing is that it must have been a bank of all these spirits waiting for as the population gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
You know, where are they going to get all these spirits, you know? And then now the Hindus are a little more circumspect about it. You know, they know there's zillions of insects. So if you have a good insect, well, they might get promoted to be a human. And if it's a bad human, they get relegated back to being an insect. Well, they're sort of, you know, spirits balance out pretty much, might pretty much balance out. As we wipe away species, well, other species have to come up, or the increased population absorbs all those spirits. So that sort of makes sense. Maybe.
Well, maybe that'll account for the fact that maybe I was a fly in my other life, because I have a tendency to want to lick my hands,
maybe,
or my wings if I had them.
Sure, yeah. You have this feeling. That's maybe where people came up with the idea that they could fly. You know, they were a bug in the previous life. But so you have that. Maybe you get 72 virgins or grapes or whatever, if you happen to pick Islam. Or you just sit back in the afterlife and enjoy the presence of God, as the Christians say. You know, you got a lot of choices. But
the worship is required there, right, for all of eternity. I mean, you can't just go up to heaven. I mean, you have to worship him forever.
Beats the heck out of me. But so why would any Bible thumper risk having a strange God when there are all these choices? You know, you have the Catholics and the Methodists, you have the UCCs and, you know, Lutherans and all this stuff. And as time goes by and society changes, they tweak their beliefs. For example, the Catholics have a thing against birth control. Now, I'm quite certain that a lot of American Catholic women and men use birth control. When I was in grade school, there were a family of 13 that lived up the street from me, a family of 11 that was had one of the kids in my class, just huge families. And I drive by St. Joe's on Sunday morning. I don't see, you know, a bus pull up and a family get out of it. You know, and see a couple kids, and some of them have 4 or 5, okay, but it's kind of odd to me that they must be using birth control. So as the movie said, what we have here is a failure to excommunicate, you know? And, you know, okay, so anyhow, if you become a non-believer, you never have to worry. Not a Judeo-Christian non-believer, if that's a tautology or something. Tautology, that's not the right word. What's the name? Right? What's the right word? Just thought, oh well. Anyhow, when two things are opposite jammed together.
Yeah, you made my mind go blank.
Yeah, so my mind went blank too. Anyhow, but if you become a non-believing Judeo-Christian, you never have to worry about violating the first commandment, which says, "Thou shalt not have strange gods before me," because if you're a non-believer, you don't have any chance of picking the wrong one. You know. So if you think this, right? So if you believe in the first commandment, you should be a non-believer, because there's no way to know for sure. Is this a live show?
Yeah.
We're supposed to be getting phone calls.
Yes, we should be.
Somebody
getting phone
should
calls.
object to something I said here.
I know. So I mean, why don't we throw the number on the screen? That's a pretty good throw.
There we go.
And you know, you can ask questions as well.
You can.
So
Otherwise, I'm going to keep on talking on my own way, and then you don't want that.
And don't forget that for those of you that are looking, we do have a 7-second delay on the broadcast, so you need to kind of turn down your television a little because it gets really confusing. You'll say something into your telephone, and unfortunately, you won't hear it on your TV for 7 seconds, and you'll keep on saying, "Oh, hello, hello, can you hear me?" So just remember to turn your TV volume down when you're talking on the phone. So.
Okay, thank you. So, answer me this. What is it about Moses' compilation of Jewish law, folklore, and custom that leads people to believe that they alone have found the right answer to life and that billions of other people in the world are wrong? What is it? Did the Jewish people lie, steal, or kill indiscriminately before Moses was even born? Mm-hmm. Did non-Jews in other parts of the world do lying and stealing and killing before they got the word proselytized to them, so starting 1,700 years ago? Society had already decided that those things were not good. Yeah. And they were written down in laws, and they were written down in their laws. They were maintained. People who did that were punished, and that was just it. They did not have to assign them to some sort of supernatural being that's going to punish them only after they die. Otherwise, why would we have prisons and stuff? God will punish them after they die. Mm-hmm. So that's just the question I've never understood, is how could society even have gotten to the point of Moses if the Ten Commandments were the first time morality was defined? Mm-hmm. That is the key. And in fact, one of our Ask an Atheist questions is along those lines about how can one be moral, but essentially what the question should refer back to is, why does anyone think that morality began when Moses climbed down from the mountain with the Ten Commandments? Mm-hmm.
Because it was convenient for the religion.
It was convenient for the religion, correct.
To say that.
So,
even though it was untrue.
So anyhow, now that we can find all kinds of scriptures online, it's become very difficult for clerics to enforce their peculiar, as I would put it, particular scriptural interpretations, even when it's among their own flock. Just look at what happened to the Episcopalians when they decided that it was okay to have a gay bishop, or even prior to that when it was okay to have a female as a leader of their church. The various clerics came out and said, "Oh, that's an abomination, and God doesn't want that. You've got to be a man, or got to be a straight guy." They banned books. They banned Sunday sales. The Catholic Church fought against contraception. It's
vigorously.
Uselessly, of course. Society's moving along. They have every church. If you just go back and look at what the church has said was sinful 200 years ago, and look at how they've evolved to where they are today, you see it. And it's only because they follow society, but some of the cement brains in there want to keep things the way keep things the way they were back when they were young. Mm-hmm. So the same thing's going to happen with same-gender marriages. That's no problem. Now, I don't care if any theist wants to obey those delusions of his or her preacher. It's no skin off my back until they try to make secular law require me to act in accordance or others to act in accordance with a particular religious belief. So this is...
shove it down your throat.
Right. That they have to say Christian prayers at a legislative meeting, or they
anywhere.
ban I don't care if somebody wants to stand out in the street and say, I want to worship. I don't care, because if I stand there, if I stand in a block away and say, don't bother worshiping, I want to have that right, and they have their right. Some examples of things that, ancient things that went by the boards was like pipe organs in churches. When the pipe organ was first introduced in churches around 1100 or 1200, there was a great uproar about how the human voice is the only legitimate instrument for worshiping their God. But pipe organs became ubiquitous. Steam locomotives. When they ran the steam locomotive, it was the devil's work. We are never going to ride in one of those things. Yeah, right. Back in the mid-1850s, when they said, oh no, the Negro is born to be a slave. Religious people came out and said that. Women in politics, women in pants, for that matter. Mixed race marriages, all of these were condemned as contrary to the will of God as expressed in the Bible. Now, I don't think the Bible has changed much. So it must be the interpretation. So for thousands of years, we have seen religion change with society. For thousands of years, the fundamentalists have sometimes forcefully tried to drag society backwards when it wanted to move forwards. Now, if a rational person could look at history, should learn from it, and so where does that leave those arrogant few who insist that the country and the world follow their beliefs, thinking that those beliefs are cast in stone. To use another biblical
don't care when you
reference.
cast stone, but you cast in concrete.
Yeah, so, well, it's cast in stone tablets, right?
Yeah.
So, it's just silly, and I find it irritating at times, but I don't care if they want to believe the stuff, just so they don't try to make others follow their lead or follow their religious beliefs. And that's basically what happens in this world until enough people die off. All these young kids are coming up, they say, oh, he's gay, so what? Or she's a lesbian, big deal. And actually, I know a woman who was in love with a woman. He transgendered, the pronouns get screwed up. He transgendered, and they got married. So, is she bisexual? Is she now heterosexual? Yeah, it's very, very, we actually know a person that way. So, it's just cute. So, in selecting the right God, consider same-gender marriage. What's it hurt you? How's it changing your marriage? Is marriage a secular institution or a religious one? If it's secular, why put religious restrictions in it? If it's religious, why should the government treat it, give it special status? There can exist both kinds of marriages, and there are beliefs that do not oppose homosexual marriage. Why should they be denied the equal rights under our Constitution? As far as religious instruction in public school, I'm more or less all for it. As long as a rabbi teaches on anything
religion.
but Judaism, a priest on anything but Catholicism, an imam on anything but Islam. Let the kids learn the variations. What's that thing that the intelligent design people claim it's not proven, or they're giving them additional options or something like that? Well, give the kids additional options about religion. Yeah, I'll bet that'll fly.
For themselves.
That'll really fly, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
right.
Yeah. So anyhow, I hope that this sort of presentation on which supernatural being might be right for you is giving you something to think about. So I'm going to let Doug now present his material on Whence the Story of Jesus. Okay, Dougie, you ready to go?
Yeah, let me
Wait,
just.
you have a question?
Let me just segue here. You were talking a little bit about, gays and the rights of gays and everything. And like you, I believe that they got every right in the world. But do you remember? This is really a sort of a segue here. But do you remember the guy that tried to assassinate President Reagan?
Hinckley was his name or something like that?
Hinckley, I think it was.
Yeah, something like that.
Because he thought that Jodie Foster, would fall in love with him. I know it was some weird thing, but he did it for her. And I guess about a few weeks ago, Jodie Foster came out and admitted that she was lesbian.
Oh, yeah? Really?
Yeah, and
I didn't know anything about that.
thinking that this guy must be in jail, ready to slash his wrists. That here he was. He went ahead like that, really for nothing, because she would have never been his.
Yeah.
Well, but that was just.
That's kind of
neither
that was
here nor there.
far-fetched, wasn't it? Yeah. So okay. Well, anyhow. So whence did Jesus?
Okay, first let me remind you that this is a call-in show, and we do like to have questions that we can answer, and we'll even take some comments from you. The number is up on the screen, and we'll be only too pleased to answer what questions we can. Now, we are starting a new segment on the show called Ask an Atheist. Now, I know that there's millions of you out there that are watching that don't really like to phone in and talk on the telephone. So you have another opportunity here, and that is you can email it. Any questions that you would like into us. We'd like you to keep it 50 words or less, if possible. It's up on the screen, and the email address, and that is askanatheist, PAN, @gmail.com. You can write in there any questions. We'll get them, we'll review them, and we'll be only too pleased to answer those questions online. Unless you specifically want to be identified, you will not be. It'll be totally anonymous. Okay, so don't feel
Just online, or also possibly on the show?
Well, sorry, be read on the show, and anyone that sends the questions in, we will not out them or mention their name on the air or any place else. So your anonymity is really kind of guaranteed.
So we have one, and all we have is a question. We don't have who sent it.
So, well,
no,
it's a little early in the show here
But,
where
yeah,
I
you
tend to
don't
put it,
have-
but one of it is, how do atheists feel about being patriotic? Well,
we can answer that then, but
yeah. So, but and anyway, so I've just got a little what seemed like an obvious quiz for you. That all you Christians out there should be able to have the questions that have the answers to. And that is, who was born on December 25th? Who was born of a virgin? Who was wrapped in swaddling clothes, placed in a manger, and attended by shepherds? Who was considered both a great traveler, traveling teacher, and master? Who traveled with 12 companions or disciples? And who performed miracles and raised the dead? Who emphasized baptism? Who had a Eucharist or a Lord's Supper? Who was viewed as the Good Shepherd, the way, the truth, the light, the Redeemer, the Savior, the Messiah? And, next question, who is omniscient, as he hears all, sees all, knows all, and none can deceive him, who was identified with both the lion and the lamb, and whose sacred day was on Sunday, the Lord's Day, who was crucified, sacrificed himself for the world, who was buried in a cave, who rose from the dead after 3 days, who was reportedly seen again by his disciples, alive, walking, and talking. Okay. More time within the lifetime of his disciples and promised to usher in the kingdom of God. Now, don't forget, and I say one more time, you have to keep in mind, I consider that when he went out of the cave after being crucified, that really was, to me, that was his first time that he was being resurrected. Okay, so anyway, who is all of this person? You say Jesus? Yeah. Well, actually, it was Mithra. And he was just one more savior who was copied by early Christians like that. And yeah, of course, Jesus had all of these attributes attributed to him. The story of Jesus is not new. I mean, they were, Mithraism, been around 2 years, 2,000 years before Jesus. And, you know, are you aware that there used to be a big pagan Mithra, if you want, worship place? And guess where the heck it was at? Right where they built the Vatican right now. So it kind of makes you wonder, who invented the story of Jesus? I mean, was it Jesus himself, or did it seem more like someone else invented him, and the Christians just copied it? Because, I mean, it's a good story when you come right down to it. Now, I know all you Christians out there are saying, no, that's lies, you know, that's not true. Well, if you want to visit the library and some museums, you can see archaeological evidence of this. You can see previous religious, what's the word I'm looking for? Previous religious descriptions and words that were carved in stone. They were inscriptions and sayings. So there are good records of basically a man like Jesus with the same attributes, same story as Jesus, as being around way, way, way before Jesus ever came on the scene. Now, that's not to say, I don't know personally if there really was a Jesus. As far as I'm concerned, well, okay, whether he was or he wasn't real doesn't really matter. What matters is the story,
mythology,
the mythology that is behind Jesus. The people were trying to write a story about a good man that had that gave lessons in life. And I think that's what the important thing was. People were trying to show other people how to be good. But even as we were talking about on our last show, the Ten Commandments were not the beginning of laws and rules and regulations for society. If it was, it would just been a madhouse, and everyone before the Ten Commandments would have just gone around killing and raping and pillaging and doing.
Aaron probably would have killed Moses.
Yeah, yeah.
Brotherly fight. You know?
Yeah, so it really, when you come right down to it, there's always been an internal morals, but it's not really morals from God. What it is, it's a social contract that everyone, all the population agrees upon. Thou shalt not steal. Well, it didn't take God to determine that, stealing was bad. The people that had been robbed before determined that, hey, I didn't like someone breaking into my little hovel in the middle of a night and stealing my 20 shekels or whatever it was. So everyone, every civilized person sort of got together and said, okay, I'll make a deal with you here. I won't rob you if you don't rob me. Now, this assumes, of course, that you can talk, that you're talking to people that aren't just outright criminals. But if you're talking amongst people that are sort of on the fence, they'll see something that their neighbor has left out, and when all they'd have to do is just walk over to it and just take it. And I go, well, nah, maybe I shouldn't do it. Well, it's those people that are right on the fence, that are on the line, that all these laws and the social contract really applies to, and it really does help control them. I won't sleep with your wife if you don't try to sleep with mine. Now, the coveting thing, well, I'm sorry, but I think coveting is good. Coveting is what makes the world go around.
Keeps the economy going.
Yeah, I mean, it makes the economy go around. So just, I'd throw that out of the Ten Commandments like that. It's.
I was told once there's a particular definition of coveting that is implied by those words. Of course, if you defined every word precisely in the Ten Commandments, they would be, the size of the Bible probably. But so,
yeah, and
just using the word covet doesn't
necessarily.
Right. It just doesn't matter. It's like atheist. The term atheist has multiple definitions, or had maintained multiple definitions. Now it's starting to coalesce around a certain core. If you actually search for the definition of atheist online, you start getting a more or less coherent source in someone who believes there is no God or gods, and so it's starting to take a new form. But the old definition is still there. It still say someone who's an immoral person. So it's has.
The Judeo-Christian idea of religion and God that's around at this current time, and that has been around actually for many thousands of years. It was before Jesus. But then it wasn't really Christian, but Judeo. The point that I'm trying to make is that religion seems to go in cycles, and like I was talking about Mithra. Well, Mithra was one of the many gods that were before Jesus, and they were religions that people clung to. But what made Christianity more popular than any any of the other previous religions. The previous religions tended to be a little bit more secretive. They went, they were with various classes of society, and they sort of propagated amongst the groups of people. But the smartest thing that you've ever seen happened when Christianity came into being. Someone thought to themselves, hey, what we need is big numbers.
An emperor.
Yeah, nothing beats big numbers of followers. So, therefore, what was it in Matthew? I think they said, "Go ye forth and spread the word to all nations." And instead of them, all the early Christians, just sort of cowering in caves, they would go out and they would spread the word and say, this is what we have. And they had promises. They had promises which no one, nothing other than a God, an imaginary God, could give them.
But it still didn't go anywhere until Constantine became boss.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, I mean,
Constantine showed up and said,
okay, look,
Christianity's good, and you guys who aren't Christians, well, we'll
but
do
in the
something to
meantime, I mean, before Constantine, there was a lot of persecution there. But one of the things about today's society, I mean, here it is, it's been, 2,000 years, plus or minus, of promises by this man named Jesus that there was going to be a second coming, and there was going to be a war, there was going to be Armageddon, that all the good people were going to be whisked away, and earth was going to be left to the Antichrist, and everyone in the world would just sort of fight to the death, and
except those that were
be annihilated, and then the rest of the good people would now take over the world, would be returned. But
unfortunately, that was all going to happen before all the apostles died and disciples died off. I mean, so he must be living somewhere in a cave somewhere we can't find him.
Yeah, well, he probably forgot about her.
Probably got tied up in traffic, supernatural traffic.
Well, I mean, have you seen Rome now?
Kolob.
I mean,
maybe he's on Kolob, that planet where what is it? Which god is the Mormon? The Mormon god's on Kolob.
Yeah,
maybe that's where they keep him. Maybe Mormonism's the right one. Anyhow,
but then again, don't you think that maybe that after 2,000 years,
1700 really, because it really didn't take off until the Holy Roman.
Excuse me, I have some of my unholy water here.
But so.
The point I'm making is that we're really should be on the verge of another religion to rear its ugly head.
Well, yeah. Well, we did, really. I mean, well, I don't know. Mormonism in the 1800s. We had Scientology in the 1950s. The Baha'i, whenever that was, I think that's relatively recent. Pardon me?
We have a phone call.
Phone call, cool.
Hello there, caller. What is your question or comment?
I just had a couple of comments and a couple of things addressed throughout the show. You were talking about certain equality issues often imposed by religion and progress opposed after it started. You can actually kind of see that happening in the Bible itself, where if you look at the early legitimate letters of Paul, he's preaching a message of equality. But you see later on, people start forging letters to say something else. Like, it's in Galatians that he's saying, there are no men, women in Christ. There's no master or slave. But later on, people started forging letters like the pastoral epistles, which is talking about women be submissive.
Yeah, well, I think women being submissive was all men's dreams, and it's easy to attribute things to God, especially when God is not saying anything to refute what people are claiming that God said or what God meant.
Right. Or even sometimes people were going around forging what they think Paul should have said, using his authority as well.
But since
I don't know if you've ever read the book Forged by Bart Ehrman.
No, I can't say I have.
But I guess that's actually makes the point even stronger that the Bible, the New Testament, and was written by people, and if you say that this section or that phrase or whatever is no longer true, which purports to be true, then it really calls into question much of everything that's written in it, especially since the council picked 4 gospels out of the numerous ones to say, yeah, these are the gospels, and even those 4 gospels don't agree with each other in clearly definitive ways. Yeah, the Council of Nicaea, when they decided these are the 27 books of the New Testament and these are the 4 gospels, and that's just, if you can't believe, if you can say that some section of the New Testament or whatever is wrong, you can't say that the entire thing's right. And so you don't, you can't really know what is correct, what is not correct.
Yeah, and you can tell by the canonization process that they didn't really care what was true. They just were caring about content.
Correct. I think that's pretty close to.
Yeah, I think that's the best way I've ever heard it described. But it's like my general point was, you see at first Christians looked like they were trying to be equal, but later on they went backwards.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, there's a lot of, that's one thing I've been looking at a lot lately, and it's kind of an interesting topic, is trying to figure out exactly what did the first Christians believe. Because it's actually not very clear. Like I'm talking about like first century Christians before the Gospels were written. What exactly did they believe is an interesting question.
Okay. And then there were the schismatics, the various schisms, various people who disagreed with some sections of what they were believing, and that were eventually phased out.
And then they branched off like every other religion does.
Yeah.
Arianism. But so who knows? It's one of the major points of I was trying to make, is that there are all these sincere, devout people worshiping in very many different ways, with significant differences between their theologies. So how could one possibly decide that, yes, they have the correct theology?
It started so quickly in Christianity, too, because if you look, the early Christians, you had like the Gnostic Christians, which almost sounds like Scientology in a way.
Yes.
Yeah.
And, you had all sorts of different representations of Jesus from the get-go. That it's hard to pinpoint what exactly did they believe back then.
Well,
it would be nice if someone kept an accurate record back then.
well, the Romans did keep a accurate record, and they don't have any mention of Jesus, so that pretty much seals it as far as
Well, same thing too with the Jewish religion. If you ask any Jewish rabbi who was Barabbas, and they'll say, Barabbas who? It's, the man they let go instead of Jesus. And they go, never heard of him.
Except from
that whole narrative was mostly made up to kind of symbolize the whole scapegoat ritual that we used to see in Christianity. And I only have a little 5 minutes till the end of the show, so I want to move quickly. My other comment, you were talking about parallels to the other gods. Even like some specific narratives, like the death, burial, and resurrection, is very analogous to Romulus, where you have 3 hours of darkness, resurrection, and meet the person on the way to a city. You know, all those points are held in Romulus as well.
Yeah, actually,
Many of them don't show up to Luke anyway.
Actually, this might be a good point now to have Pam put up the other slide. There we go. Page down through.
If you look on the screen, you'll see a list of all the other gods that have been worshipped at one time or another.
With characteristics similar to Jesus, right?
Yeah, some of them were, but I mean, these are all believed to be gods. There's actually a total of 35 of them is all that I could find. But that's a lot of gods.
Yeah.
That are out
I
there.
can even tell there's a few you're missing. Like I think there's the Descent of Inanna story is parallel to the resurrection. Kind of have some parallels. It's not a strong parallel, but there are certain elements.
I know.
Yeah. So.
Well, we want to do one more thing in the show, so I'd like to thank you very much for calling, and calling again on the next show.
I will try.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay.
Okay, let's answer a few questions. You'll see up on the screen the place that you can email in questions. So I've got a list here. How do atheists feel about being patriotic?
Well, they actually, in a way, they would be more patriotic than those who would think that their God comes first.
Yeah.
That what their God wants, because as we have seen through the show, what God wants can differ so drastically among the various religions. So actually, atheists, by not owing allegiance to God, could probably be considered to be even more patriotic.
Yeah. Well, I was an atheist when I enlisted during the Vietnam conflict. I enlisted during 1962. So I was an atheist and I was patriotic. So that answers that question. Another one here, if you don't have heaven to look forward to, how can you be happy? Or are all atheists grouchy? Well,
I love it. I'm happy, and I'm an atheist. I look forward to doing stuff in this life because I am sure that once my life is ended, I'm just going to be in the same state it was before I was born.
Exactly. Yeah, no afterlife. This is it, in the here and now, and I'm not unhappy.
However, if there is an afterlife, my feeling would be that supernatural being would be glad I didn't pay attention to millennia-old superstitious nonsense and went on with trying to make life better and learn about the universe. So, and that's my new God. I'm going to start a religion based on that.
If you don't celebrate religious holidays, do you celebrate something else? I mean, these are legitimate questions that we've been asked. Well, I will celebrate any holiday